So I think this is the other shoe to the slum clearance. On the one hand, the Housing Act of 1949 allowed monies to be spent for slum clearance. So many downtown areas, many areas of African American residents were bulldozed under the idea that they were slums. And one of the difficulties in that, in Little Rock, was that often African American areas of residence contained mixed areas. So you would have, fairly dilapidated units sitting next to, more better housing, and housing that was quite upscale in terms of the day, because the black community, because of segregation, tended to live next to one another, and because of kind of safety numbers, there were pockets of black residents in the city, but they were mixed with white areas of residence too. What would be called classic salt and pepper neighborhoods. So you have kind of sprinkles of black and white neighborhoods together in a fairly small place. And African American neighborhoods were targeted clearly with slum clearance, and some would say arbitrarily raised, even though they weren't entirely all slum areas, but those were moved. So the question is then, where do you move those people to? If you knock all their homes down, where do you relocate them to? And part of the answer to that is public housing. So public housing is constructed to relocate a lot of those people whose homes have been bulldozed under slum clearance. And consciously the city builds public housing segregated, which later the city would go into court, and the defense would be that nothing prevented us from doing that. There was no law to prevent public housing from being segregated at the time, and the norm was to segregate those places. And so they built public housing for African Americans that encouraged the movement towards the east and the south of the city, and they built white public housing that was edged more towards the kind of west of the city. So by constructing these public housing units and offering alternative housing for the people whose homes have been razed by slum clearance, they could kind of to some degree manipulate where the population would grow and who would move where. So this is the kind of other side to slum clearance, building these segregated public housing units and locating them strategically in areas that were designed to promote a racial segregation in terms of housing patterns.